Thank you.
Thank you, Sonny. Oh, I need the clicker. Thank you, Sonny. Like she was saying, my name is Bill Hurley. I've been with Granite Telecom since, 2006. It's been a very long time. I've worn a bunch of different hats at Granite over my time there, managed several different teams, and was brought on a couple of years ago to help set up our COE and establish our RPA program. I am joined, like she said, by Drew Kowalski, who's our kind of main architect and engineer.
Yeah, you're good. Oh yeah, like Bill said, my name's Drew Kowalski. I'm one of the members of the COE at Granite. My title is a project manager, but I play more of a solution architect development type role. I've been with Granite for 4 years now, 2 as part of the RPA team. And we're excited to tell you guys about our journey.
Fantastic. And Todd Foley, I'm the Chief Digital Officer and Chief Information Security Officer for Lydonia Technologies. We're happy to be here with Granite today. We're Granite's services partner.
Thank you, Todd and Drew. And again, thank you for inviting us to join you up here on stage today. We're honored. So, I should probably talk a little bit about who Granite is. We are a $1.85 billion telecom provider. We have over 700,000 locations serviced with 6,000 satisfied corporate clients. We know that because we use NPS to measure customer satisfaction, and we average 5 times our industry rate. We service over 1.75 million voice and data lines. So even if you haven't heard of us, quick show of hands, who has ever had Starbucks? Then you use our services. We service over 85 of the Fortune 100 customers. So pretty much any time you go and do a retail transaction, you're probably using one of our Granite lines. So. Oh, we also have $0 in debt. And actually, I do have a quick note. Didn't make the slide because it was just announced last week that Granite is, for the 2nd year in a row, the #1 most charitable giver in Massachusetts. We donated $72.8 million to local nonprofits and $87.4 million overall just last year alone. So. So, the reason why we're here is to kind of talk about what we did and how we got set up. It was, just over 2 years ago when we established our RPA program. We were tasked initially with releasing 25 automations per quarter, which sounds like a lot. I know we've heard for some other clients that have a dozen or so after a year or so. There's really only one way to do that, and that's to use multiple partners to accelerate the program. We started off using Automation Anywhere professional services, and we kind of bogged them down with our initial round of releases there. So then we had to utilize a couple of other partners. We got through our pipeline, and we kind of reached a point of maturity with our own stuff. So that's when we established our own in-house COE, and started managing and doing a lot of the maintenance on our own when we realized that we were going to need some additional help as well. That's when we partnered with Lydonia for their managed services and consulting, and they've been doing an excellent job supporting our program, allowing us to focus on a little bit more of the maintenance and kind of net new innovation. We can focus on the bigger picture items while getting some assistance from these guys. So yeah. It's been a great partnership so far.
Likewise, and thank you for that.
Yeah. And just a quick note on one of our success stories, and I'm sure that we'll talk about kind of how we got to this point throughout the course of the discussion here today. Working with our collections department, they've been one of our primary supporters here. Everybody has a collections department. I feel like it's pretty universal. We're always signing up new customers to come and join Granite. We deal primarily with multi-location corporate customers. And obviously before we want to do business with somebody, we want to do a quick credit check. So that was one of the bots that we were able to put in place. It's 113. And this are numbers from just last month alone. So it was 113 transactions that didn't have to be done by that team. Dunning letters sent when people are 30, 60, 90 days overdue. We try to let them know. That has always been a focus of that department. but they were only able to get through, a couple hundred or so every month. We've been able to put 3 separate bots in place for the different levels of letter there to send those off automatically. So not only are they sending that quantity and saving that time, that team would never have been able to achieve those numbers without the help of the bots. And then for the restrict, restore bots, they were able to process over 650 transactions last month. Those are very time consuming for the group, so that saved countless numbers of hours for those guys. So that was just a little brief overview kind of what we've been able to achieve over the past couple of years. And I'm sure you guys want to hear about some more details.
I want to hear about more details.
Did you have any questions that you'd like to
Yeah,
answer?
there's one that just jumps off the slide, right? Which is, you started with a goal of 25 automations per quarter. Why? Why did you start down that journey? What were the drivers? What was the context for it?
Yeah, so like probably everyone else here, our company realized that we needed to have a digital transformation take place to start taking advantage of new technology and really empower our employees to be able to do their jobs better and faster. And so we identified RPA as one of the pieces in that puzzle. Yeah. Our backbone system that has been with Granite since we first started is a very antiquated system, and so automating things through other methods was not really feasible. So we identified RPA as a way to interact with that system and automate a lot of our processes.
And it was similar to what I was hearing at the keynote from this morning. Is with our antiquated systems, we already had in place, planning on replacing a lot of that stuff with our Granite 2.0 systems. Mm-hmm. And that's, like you were saying this morning, it was 3 to 5 years out. And then the pandemic hit, and they said, do it in 3 months. So RPA was a great way to kind of bridge that gap while those guys are still working on releasing their information.
So you had real business challenges just from the limitations of the legacy systems. You had a massive driver with COVID, and you were able to step in and solve for that with a really accelerated program. So there must have been tremendous pressure to be successful with that. Tell me a little bit more about that North Star goal. Where did the 25 come from?
I think the 25 was just a quantity that we were looking to hit, a goal that was put in place. Our CEO always has very aggressive goals. We've always been growing. Granite's always been hiring ever since I've been there, except during the pandemic. So we've always had very aggressive goals for growth. So the number itself is, I guess, kind of an arbitrary number that we started out with.
How did you achieve it then? How did you hit that number? Because that is ambitious. I mean, we've worked with clients who have been able to scale at really accelerated rates. I think you're one of our best examples for sure, right? How did you produce it? You mentioned you work with multiple service partners, right?
It takes a lot of help. It takes a ton of help, especially getting off the ground. We initially partnered with Automation Anywhere, and we kind of, like I said, maxed them out. We put an IDP project together, and it took a lot of lifting to classify all our different documents. So it takes help from the outside, but it also takes help from the inside. We both come from operational backgrounds, just like they were saying at the keynote this morning. We have a strong sense of the business, and that's why we were selected. We weren't too keen on just bringing in outside developers or even folks from our own IT team that weren't familiar with the business practices.
Right.
So that has been, I feel, one of our biggest positives. We know the business. So we were able to help guide the SMEs and also the development team and kind of everybody coming together. Lots of meetings.
I think that's critical, right? I think a lot of people approach automation initially as a technical kind of challenge, a traditional IT effort, and it really needs to be collaborative with the business in a unique way. So your background there obviously would help drive success. Tell me a little bit, you mentioned the CEO kind of driving that North Star goal in the collaboration with the business. How did that form over the course of your scaling? Tell me a little bit about the culture at Granite. Did you guys have some challenges with people being defensive about automation or anything like that?
Yeah, so like I think we've heard from a lot of other presenters here the past 2 days, executive buy-in was really key in getting our program off the ground. Our CEO gave us a very ambitious goal to complete the 25 automations per quarter, but he also helped champion that goal. We have an all-hands meeting every Monday morning, and it was frequently featured. We also were able to, if our team met the goal each quarter, we got an extra day off each month, so there's a lot of pressure. But
So wait a minute. Tell me a little bit more about this. People at Granite got a day off if you hit your automation goals?
That's correct. Yep. So for a small team, we had a lot of people focused on what we were working on. The executive buy-in was key. Not only, we had to invest in the technology, and then also invest our employees' time in the technology. And the buy-in really trickled down from the top for business leaders being willing to let us come in and automate their processes, and then for managers to allow their employees to spend time working with us during discovery and working with us to build these automations, and then at the SME level, them taking time out of their day to work on the automations with us and really build high quality things that helped them. So that was really key, and I think Granite in general has a culture that really supported the automation initiative. As far as pushback, our policy has always been that we're going to automate work for you, but that doesn't mean that your job's in jeopardy. We really just want to help you with the things that you don't really like to do, the boring, mundane tasks, and that way you can focus your time on the more human value type things.
And have an extra day off every once in a while.
That
too.
helps too.
That's not so bad.
And buy-in from HR as well is we have a strong corporate culture at Granite of kind of hiring and building up from within. I've been there for 17 years myself and
Yeah.
built myself up. But we have, with our HR department, has been working over the past decade or so to put together what they call the path to progress. So for every position at Granite, there's a little checklist that says here are things you need to do to kind of get to the next level, to get your next promotion. So we were able to leverage that and say, hey guys, we can automate some of your base tasks so that you have more time to focus on the more cognitive stuff, build yourself up on the path to progress. Stop clicking tickets all day. We can take that over for you.
So it sounds like you guys had an ideal environment, right? You had the right support, the right commitment, the right buy-in, the right culture. So what didn't work? What were some of the pitfalls you encountered along the way?
I guess it starts with coming back to the vendors that we utilized. We didn't know what we didn't know at the time. When we started, the team was put together in July and August, and we started automating in September, October.
Wow.
So we didn't have time to do training per se. We were relying on experts to guide us.
Yeah.
And a lot of that expert guidance was good. We did learn that the vendors were doing things in different ways, which now is making it interesting to support. There's different ways of variable handling. There's different ways of error handling.
Everybody had their own best practices.
Everybody has their own. It's an art. It's not a science, right? That was one of my big takeaways from
Well
last
said,
year.
yeah.
So some are good, some are bad. Some of the frameworks work better for certain processes, if that makes sense.
It does.
As part of the 25 per quarter goal, part of the sacrifice was kind of the robustness of the solution. So we have some automations that run unattended, completely autonomously. Nobody has to touch them. Nobody has to worry about them at all. And then we have some others that do require some heavy lifting in terms of data preparation and making sure that the runs happen efficiently, on time, and without any errors. So.
Yeah, I know our managed services team has been working with a lot of that.
Yeah, we've been keeping them busy.
Yeah, I'd also add, I think the pulling our COE from like the operational side with non-technical people had a ton of benefits, but it also meant that we had to really learn really quickly. And working with the partners was one way we did that, and then we focused a lot on training, but at the beginning, we didn't know what we didn't know. And so as we've gotten more mature in our program, we've all built our RPA skills up, and now the technical side is no longer a weakness, but for a while it was tough to kind of start from scratch there. And then a couple other things I'd say, we really had to focus on maintaining high quality input data for our processes. That became a big focus as we moved on. And then also vetting automations. At the beginning, we really didn't know how to pick good processes to automate. And as over time, we got better at that. But that's really key in making sure you're going after the high ROI use cases that also make good automation candidates.
So tell me a little bit more about that. You guys went big, went fast. You were able to navigate the bumps along the way, but you've got some lessons learned. You've got some best practices, some governance that's evolved, and as you're continuing to look to scale, I'm sure that's continuing to evolve, right? How do you see your governance, your best practices today, and where you think you're going to want to go to?
Yeah, right off the bat, I think one thing we learned early on is to really focus on building robust code and really creating automations that work well with minimal intervention. And then when things do go wrong, having really good error handling to handle as many situations as possible, and then also really good logging to be able to diagnose the problems after they happen. Another big thing that we made a priority as we move forward was using reusable bot components. And what we found is not only does that shorten development time when you need to plug a piece into a new process, but it also means that you only need to support a component across processes instead of individual pieces of code. So that's been a real focus for us, is to kind of componentize pieces of automation where we can. Another thing that we found to be really helpful is leveraging APIs where possible.
Yep.
That just means there's less things that can go wrong when it's run from the back end over an API. And then also a big part was maintaining SME involvement in the process. So, I think a lot of people hear automation and they think, okay, once I'm done with the development, the process is over, and it's just going to run perfectly for the rest of the time it exists. But what we found is it was really key to keep the SMEs involved even after we completed the automation, because they know the process best and they'll be able to see if something isn't working the way it should be. And it also just keeps them a part of the process. So they.
I think that's huge, right? I think one of the things we see sometimes is a challenge is we'll engage with clients and we'll either pick up on the managed services side, the support for their existing environment, or we'll be working with them on enhancements or other things. And a lot of times, if an automation has been in production for a while, the owner is the automation team. And it's still a business process. I think keeping the business engaged, not just for escalation, but for dialogue and responsibility, allows you to be much more collaborative with them to identify, upcoming changes, but also enhancements and additional value. And it seems to be something that's been a huge factor in your success as well, because you don't have dead automations, right? Everything is active, everything is used. That's impressive. And I think it's that commitment with the business that's the difference there.
And absolutely, before he mentioned that, I was going to try to jump in with that, again, echoing this morning's keynote.
Thank you very much.
We have run into that issue previously, where we put an automation in place and the business unit kind of forgot about it. Going forward, it like they were saying this morning, garbage in, garbage out. It starts with the SMEs providing the good data in the first place, but then really taking ownership of the overall process. We can make sure that the bot is running okay and it doesn't have any errors, but we are not necessarily looking into that particular system to make sure all the transactions are processing correctly.
Yeah.
So having and keeping the SMEs involved is integral to keeping the program going.
Well said. I think it's fantastic that you were able to achieve the scale you were able to so quickly, that you took a team, threw them together, produced a ton of automations and a ton of value for the business, and you're continuing to scale and to grow, and you've reached a point of self-sufficiency there. It's a model for how to jumpstart, go big, go fast, and then keep going, right? You had some very unique things. I don't know anyone who's awarded days off for automation team success, and that's laudable and impressive. I think also you had a great climate, but at the same time you encountered a lot of the challenges everyone else has, right? And it's been a learning process for you as you guys have grown. I think your story is fantastic. I want to thank you for being here, but I also want to take some time and open it up to people who might have some questions, like how do they get a day off, maybe?
Talk to your owner.
Or some thoughts, or maybe just sharing their observations in ways that their experience has been either similar or different. Anyone with a question?
Do you guys think of any other ways to incentivize your stakeholders to participate? Like, I love the day off, but I think it's always good to, is there gift cards that you're giving out, or obviously?
Jack has a question. Jack, we'll get to you in just a second. Garrett rudely interrupted Sunny as she was bringing the mic. Garrett's question, for those who couldn't hear, was whether there were any other incentives besides days off, and I'm a little taken aback at that, because isn't that enough? Were there other incentives? I mean, I think one of the things I know we've seen is that you fostered this healthy competition as well within the business, right? Can you guys speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I honestly, I'd say one of the biggest incentives was for processes in our company that people didn't like doing. We were able to focus on those. So really, you know, not only are you getting a return on saving time and saving money, but you're also improving the experience of the employee. So they're, you know, no longer having to do a very tedious process that takes a lot of time, and so it, you know, improves morale and that sort of thing. Yeah, so I'd say that was probably the biggest other incentive.
Yeah, I think that value prop we always talk about in automation, but because you guys were able to deliver it so quickly, right? People would have an idea, it would get done within a few weeks, you'd be on to the next one. That immediate gratification aspect of it, I think you really built on and drove that. But I know, like in the management and the leadership teams, there was some healthy competition too, right? People like brag about, I had more automations done, or we're doing better than you, or any of that?
We do, yes, we did have a couple. I mean, harking on the collections department is once you can get really in with the management team of a particular department, the ideas come from them. So we only had to do that first round of ideation, and then our strongest departments started coming up with their own ideas and saying, hey, we want to automate this. So we do have a couple. It's the collections and the AP team.
Led the way?
Yeah. Amanda likes to name her bots too, so it's like Betty Bot and Billy Bot and Bobby
I love
Bot.
that.
Yeah.
We have a lot of clients who name their bots. My favorite is they call one of their primary bots Row, which makes sense. Jack?
So earlier you mentioned that it's important to have good logging, and I was curious, what common or generic bots did you build so that you can reuse them? We built a logging bot and a login bot that does all our logins for, say, some of our secondary systems. What else did you guys do in that arena?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, we have kind of our backbone system. It's a legacy system. And so a lot of our reusable bots are focused around that. So like you mentioned, we have a login bot to get into that system. I would say the biggest reusable bot that's provided the most value is the system is very heavily ticketed based. So we built a bot to open tickets, and we use that across several processes to open tickets within that system, since that's how a lot of the departments communicate with each other. A lot of our orders are placed. So that's been a big value deliverer is automating a lot of reusable components for that system.
Maybe Bill, what are some of the other common reusable components?
That's kind of actually a good question. I think that we need to be better at that, to be honest
Yeah,
with you.
so another one we're actually working on right now is reusable error emails. So like we mentioned at the beginning, we worked with 3 different outside development groups to build the majority of our automations at the start of our program. And what we found is that, you know, one of the ways we log errors is by sending an email to a distro that we can check, and they all look different. So that makes it difficult to sort and filter and really have easy oversight over the environment. And so one thing we're working on right now is building a bot that standardizes how we do that. And that way it just makes it a lot easier to filter. And we're, you know, slowly trying to make the bots more similar. Like if there's enhancements that we identify, we want to try to kind of homogenize our environment to make it easier to support.
Taking a touch it and tweak it approach, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Great question. Anyone else?
Yeah, no, we can hear it.
I was gonna ask, where were you guys at in your business process management maturity going into your automation journey? How did that help or hinder your progress?
Great question. So how did a maturity in the business process side help or hinder things when you started automation?
Yes. A lot of, when I started at Granite, we did analog phone lines. That was it. We've since grown into a major kind of technology and internet and managed services company. Some of the newer products don't have mature kind of business flows, which gives us leverage to kind of help them along the way to say, hey, we're doing it this way now, but with the bot, we can kind of eliminate this many steps. We found that with some of our more mature processes, a lot of those live within the system that he was just talking about. Those guys were a lot more receptive. The processes are more difficult. There's a number of steps and complexities and verifications and stuff. But those are the ones that we're kind of trying to tackle because they're the more time consuming. So
you had a mix of
Yeah.
processes, some more mature than others.
yeah, absolutely.
And you found opportunity within the more mature processes to create efficiencies, and you found opportunity within the less mature processes to kind of create a standardization and a maturity that didn't exist.
Yeah, I think also, you know, automation can be a vehicle to reassess your processes. So it's an opportunity, you know, when you go in and you sit down with the person who does it every day and you say, show me what you want to automate, it's also an opportunity to look at what they're doing and try to find ways to improve the process at the same time. So it really can be a vehicle to get you in the door to actually start assessing if there's any ways you can improve the process at the same time that you automate.
We've seen an interesting evolution on the consulting side. You know, there used to be a maxim years ago that you would never automate a bad process. Fix the process, then automate, right? And a lot of good reasons for that, right? You want to be able to do effective process improvement. You don't want to waste time automating something and then have to automate it a different way. But with the ability to automate things at rapid speed, we're finding in our business process side of the business, we kind of have adopted the maxim that you should always automate a bad process. Partly for the reason that Drew mentioned, just the process of doing that automation will give you some tactical ability to make process change. But also, it's just much faster, much easier, and much cheaper to change a process when it's automated by tweaking a robot as opposed to retraining and changing people. So we take this model now where we use automation as a leader for business process transformation and change, And we find it solves for maybe the biggest barrier historically to business transformation that's been out there, which is bandwidth, right? You know, I've seen a lot of organizations that have done very detailed business process transformation plans, really good Lean Six Sigma work. They've identified things, whether they were using process mining tools or not, where there was an opportunity for change. And those plans have been on the shelf for a while. And they've been on the shelf for a while because they went through that exercise. They went back to the business and said, we think you should do this. And the business said, I agree, that's great. We don't have time for it, we're short-staffed, we have this event coming up, we can't do it, let's talk about it next year, if I get budget for it, maybe. And what we find is that in addition to being able to affect change more rapidly by leading with automation, we also have the ability to do a little quid pro quo, to say, hey, there's this great plan for business transformation. If we were able to solve for the fact that your team is short-staffed, to give you back X amount of time every week, every month, to shorten this crushing event that you don't have enough people for, would you be able to participate in just this much of the business transformation exercise? A lot of times the answer is, yeah, please. And I think a lot of the stuff we used to consider best practice for business process optimization, we're now finding is changed by the ability to leverage technology, in particular automation anywhere, to make that change easier. Just a thought. Any other questions?
Do you guys still have the goal of 25 automation?
No, once our contracts expired, they kind of let us off the hook for those. So, but since then, we've released, what, 28 of our own?
Yeah.
So we're still continuing to grow. There are only 4 of us. So that's why kind of our challenge is bandwidth.
Yeah, so after, you know, we worked with outside development to really kind of build the program and get it off the ground, and then we've switched to doing a lot of development work in-house. So fortunately, the expectation of 25 a quarter did not stick with us for that part, since it's a little bit less development capacity these days. But like Bill said, we're still building automations and just a little bit slower pace, but I like to think we're building better automations now.
No, absolutely. Now that we have these lessons learned, we know about error handling and how to put the framework together, what the businesses need. We're taking more time now that we have it to put the solutions in place. So.
Right.
I think that model generally plays out and works across our clients. Not necessarily as rapid and as aggressive as these guys did, but the idea is don't start tiny, right? Don't slow roll it. We always say to people who are new to automation, when they say, you know, what's the best time, the best model to start? We say, you know, the best time to start automation is 3 years ago. The second best time is you better get going. But a lot of organizations don't reach their scale for years. And I think it's because they do it more organically. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially if you don't have that experience, to invest in a way where you can get to scale and get to breadth in terms of business participation quickly, but you don't need to continue to invest. So the cost per automation for these guys has gone way, way down because they're able to do it internally, right? And at the same time, the quality of those automations is much better, yet they still have the scale and the business impact that they wouldn't have had if they were doing it completely organically, right? Yeah, I think in our model, we always say this stuff isn't rocket science. It can be transformational, but you don't need to be on the hook to services companies forever. If it helps you get started or it helps you with bandwidth and with scale, great. And in fact, these guys engage with us on an ongoing basis for a very lightweight managed service offering, with the idea being, why don't you guys focus on net new impact to the business? Why don't you take the stuff that would otherwise require a ton of care and feeding or a ton of cleanup and offload that inexpensively, and continue to create really valuable automations that the business appreciates? Right? Any other questions or thoughts?
Are you putting any effort in enabling the business users to build their own bots?
Are you putting any effort into enabling the business users to build their own bots?
We have only just begun, and we're eager to get going. We're trying to identify some good candidates is kind of our big issue right now. That is something that we have been exploring kind of over the past few months or so. Because just with our limited bandwidth, we see that and of course Gen AI as like our biggest drivers for increased scalability. But identifying good candidates is a little bit difficult, especially, I mean, we had just from the collections department, they threw us one and they said, okay, he's been here for, 4 months and he pretty much gets it and he's really good at Excel, and I don't think that's gonna be a great fit. We're kind of looking for somebody with a little more business experience, so we've been trying to do some internal vetting there, but we do see that as a big driver for our scaling going forward, and hopefully use up a bunch of our RE licenses.
Yeah, ultimately there's a math problem, right? And the math problem is you're only going to create as much automation as you have automation developers. We see, and I know we've talked about it, citizen development in particular is a huge driver for scale. And there are some unique challenges with that, and there are some unique solutions for that we've been able to build. I know Rajesh, who asked the question, helps lead that program for us. But I think what we're most excited about now, especially in the context of this conference, is the generative AI prompts and the co-pilot capabilities lower the barrier to entry. So it's not, hey, we need to have a power user, or this person needs to have this expertise, or this background, or this CS degree. It's truly delivering on the promise that anyone can do this. And we're seeing that play out certainly across our clients, and I expect you're going to find it as well.
Yeah, we were talking about it right before the session, that it does kind of shift the math for us, like you said.
It changes the game.
So we're excited to try that out.
I know we had a question back here as well.
How are you guys supporting your production lines? They take some care and feeding and go. How do you do that?
The question was, how are you supporting your production bots? They take some care and feeding. How do you do that?
Yeah, so they definitely do. And we, as a COE, we all work together, honestly, to identify when there's an issue, diagnose the issue, and then make enhancements if necessary. And then on top of that, part of our managed services contract with Lydonia is they've been super helpful as another resource we can tap into with development experience if we need help solving a problem, and also to take some of the load off us for supporting the production environment.
When we started out, we were all kind of acting as individual project managers,
Yeah.
managing our own bots, working with our business units. So now it's kind of keeping an eye on the control room throughout the day to make sure, hey, I know that bot 7 runs on the hour, and bot 8 runs on 15 minutes after that, and 9 runs on the 30 at the bottom of the hour. So it's kind of keeping an eye on those throughout the course of the day, kind of keeping an eye on our own stuff. And
I know we were working on implementing automatic alerting and SLAs per automation. Where are we with that?
Yeah, so that actually ties back into kind of standardizing our error emailing. And one of the components that we're working on adding into that is a connection to your guys' JIRA system to send errors automatically to the managed services team. That way we could have them worked on as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think what I liked about that question is the recognition that there's enhancements in other care and feeding. We don't think bots break as a rule, right? If you developed them right, the bot is going to run, and if it stops running, it's probably because something in the environment changed.
95% of the time.
Yeah, so we looked at this space, and we had clients before we built our managed service practice who were running kind of a traditional application support model, and we didn't feel it was working, right? You don't want to call help desk, say my automation didn't run, and they ask you, well, have you tried rebooting it? And they go through a checklist. That doesn't work. And in most organizations, that means that you've got to get an RPA developer involved to troubleshoot it. And yeah, you can open a ticket with Automation Anywhere, and they can help you out, but they're not going to change the configuration or adjust your VDI or play around with your applications. And so what we found most commonly was that the best developers on our clients' automation teams, even when they had application support contracts, it still had to be the person who wrote that automation who got involved to fix it. And if they didn't, it would just not be fixed for a period of time. It didn't work with the traditional managed service model. So we built something specifically for automation. Our first level support people are all certified RPA developers, right? Certified Automation Anywhere developers. They also have the ability to reconfigure things in production. We build run books as part of our onboarding, so we don't have to get the guy who wrote it to do it. We can support it. And our model is, still to use the appropriate change control. There's an emergency change control model and all that. But we did it in a way that wasn't just break fix, because that's not, most of the work that happens. What happens with most organizations is you build an automation that has a powerful value proposition, the business gets that benefit, and then maybe something changes and it needs to be adjusted, or maybe more commonly someone says, oh, we really would love it if you did this other thing to it, or we love it, but we should have thought about it when we did it initially, we need this thing. And you don't have the same type of value conversation with the business at that point. It's kind of like, you gotta do it, right? So it's not, well, you're gonna save, 1 million more hours if we do that. No, it's, okay, we kind of gotta do it. So it kind of slides through there.
I've seen that a ton.
And that kind of effort is something that most support models don't do. So when we built our model, we were thoughtful about it. We said, for this kind of scale, our experiences, you're going to need probably this much developer time to support it. And we created tiers that our clients can choose from where, yeah, we do the break fix, we do the 24/7, first level support or RPA developers, but our clients use those teams to do enhancements, change requests, and even net new automations within their tier. And we find that that's really well suited for the reality of how you support a large automation environment, right? And as these guys mentioned, we use Jira ticketing systems, but we try and tie those directly in to the control room and into triggers, and so we can automate the alerts, but do it intelligently, because not all automations are created equal. And a problem with an automation isn't necessarily a problem as long as it runs once a day, maybe, or whatever it is. Each one is different. So you've got to have those SLAs defined. You've got to still have participation of the business so you can do that properly. And if you do those things right, it's not as heavy a lift as it might be, right? It allows you to be more efficient, to go faster.
I think we're at the top of the hour, so if there's one more question, we can take that. Any more questions?
No? Guys, thank you so much.
Before you go, can I just ask you guys to please fill out the survey? Thank you. So,
And any other questions, feel free to connect with us after this.
let me go. Uh-oh. Just
There it
kidding.
is.
There we go. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.